Sid?
No.
Okay. Right.
That's being streamed.
Hello, it's Susie here now, live for another divorce TV show, and I've got some headlines for you, but just before then I just want to give you a taste of what's coming. We've got an international award-winning speaker who's going to be coming and telling us how to move our lives forwards when we feel a bit stuck or frightened in the process of divorce. And we've got a wonderful healing at the end with Telli, and we've got a real live person sharing her shared story, her own experience of co-parenting. So first of all, let's give you some headlines. I've picked 3 this week. We've got Mark Allen, who he reveals in Belfast Live divorce heartache as he prepares for his return to potting bulls. It's really sad. He says that in life these things happen. He's getting divorced. He's been told, he says, that it can take up to 2 years to finalise the divorce and to get everything sorted. He says it's going to take a long time to sort things out, I think, especially with the way things are with the coronavirus. So I just wanted to say, don't worry, Mark. Yes, it can often take 2 years, but it doesn't have to. If you work through the financial options, perhaps you're working with a relevant financial expert. If you use dispute resolution like mediation, you can use that online. You can actually move things along really quite fast. It's only when you use the court system as the main way that things get really, really held up, and that's even without coronavirus. Next news story. It's a bit of a horrible one, actually, but these things do happen. This husband suffocated his wife because he didn't want to pay for the divorce, according to the Metro. But if you read a little bit further, you see a bit more about what was going on here. Prosecutors say that Elledge strangled or suffocated his wife because he did not want to pay for a divorce, and he wanted to prevent his wife from fleeing to China with her daughter. The reason I picked this out is because obviously most people don't commit murder, but it is absolutely terrifying to the thought of losing your child. And with so many people now having international relationships, I think it's just very important to accept that fear around losing your child can bring on very extreme behaviour in people. So if you're thinking of moving countries and your ex is, you think, being very unreasonable, it's amazing how often one parent doesn't realise how traumatic it is for the other. So I'm not saying that you're likely to end up being murdered, but do take some advice, talk to a parenting expert. In fact, we're talking to one later today, and take these things seriously. And finally, Forbes are talking about the way that divorce can impact your business. In case of both spouses having an ownership interest during the marriage, it might be that one spouse would buy the other one out in the case of divorce. And perhaps the business would be sold and the proceeds distributed, or maybe you'd maintain the business partnership in spite of the dissolution of the marital partnership. Now, I know some people might be thinking, how can I possibly stay in a business with someone I'm now getting divorced from? Well, you'd be surprised. I mean, I know a couple, it was quite a messy divorce. It wasn't tidy. There was infidelity involved. However, they were very sensible about it. They had put so much time and effort into this business. They didn't want to just sell it straight away. So they worked out how to do it. One would go in one day, another would go in another day, and they were just very grown up about it. So if you do have a business together, it's amazing how many businesses go down the tube because of a divorce. It doesn't have to be that way, and so just know that it's perfectly okay to find a way to make it work. And talking to a financial planner early on is really good, because presumably you don't want to stay in the business together forever, so you want to have a plan on how to leave. It just might take a few years before that's a really sensible thing for you to do financially. Now we're going to come to our expert, who is an international award-winning speaker and trainer of speakers, and her name is Dr. Cheryl Chapman.
Hello Susie, how are you?
Welcome, Cheryl. It's lovely to see you. Thank you so much. And I just wanted to share, I know Cheryl because Cheryl was the person who gave me the opportunity to be a TEDx speaker. She's also an amazing trainer. And one thing that really struck me with the whole TEDx experience was how much it transformed the lives of the mainly women, not all women, but mainly women who were involved in that. So you spend a lot of time helping people transform their lives. So I'm just going to give you the floor, because I know that you know about divorce yourself, and you must have worked with many, many people going through major difficult life situations. So if you could give some of your perspective on how people's view of how they can change their lives, how incredible that can be, because you really don't feel like that, do you, when you're stuck in it in right at the beginning?
No, you don't at all. Yeah, and thank you. I've had my fair share of breakups, shall we say, and makeups. Yeah, I run a company with another lady called Marion Beverton, which is called the Find Your Why Foundation. And as part of that process, when you asked me to come on tonight, I was kind of like, oh, is it about finding your why? Well, actually, I think it is. Because what we talk about is, life can be going along really happily, and then there are 4 Ds that can come up. One is a death of a loved one, one is the death of a relation, i.e. divorce, one is where you feel disappointed, and then the other is like a disaster. It's like COVID would fit into that. However, if you think about it, when you are divorced from somebody that you've been with for whether or not it's a short period of time or a long period of time, you feel like something's died because the relationship's died. You're definitely going through a divorce. You feel possibly disappointed either with yourself or with them or the situation. And it can feel like it's a disaster. So all 4 of those are very relevant.
Absolutely true. Are you moving something around? Because I can hear it's almost like heavy breathing, but it might be the mouse moving. Just aware. I hope nobody else on the call is making any noises whatsoever. Not allowed, because this also goes on to the iTunes podcast, so we want beautiful sound all the way through. So it's fine now. So, but yeah, just be aware nothing's moving when you're going, but it might not be you. But absolutely, the 4 Ds.
Yeah, definitely. And so where do you go from there? Well, the first thing is that there's a 3-step process that we help people with, which is awareness of where you are, how you're feeling, where just being really honest with yourself. And then the second part of the awareness is, who are you really? What is it that you want to be now that you're going through this change? So the second part after awareness is intention. So what do you want? And of course, that's a really difficult question, isn't it, when something's changing? I remember, when I left my last husband, I didn't really know what I wanted. It was kind of like, I knew I didn't want what we'd got, and I knew he wasn't happy and I wasn't happy. So there was no point, trying to flog a dead horse, as they say. However, I didn't really know what I wanted. So I found myself being okay to begin with. And then I was like, maybe it wasn't so bad as I remember. So maybe I can go back to that. Well, in this intention piece, you've got to really change your story. So you've got to be really honest. How was it really for you and for your partner? And I know you're a much better expert specifically around divorce here, but you've got to change that story. Otherwise, you stay stuck in the story of, was it me, was it them, you know, who can I blame, who can I not blame, do I really want it, and that will just, you know, turn into like a spiral of doubt, really. And then once you know what it is that you do want, and you might not know for definite, but you can start to move, because that's the M, move. We sometimes call manifest, but we actually call it AKA move your ass. You know, move towards what it is that you want to happen. What was really interesting, just yesterday I was speaking with a client, we were creating a story for her to share. And I really want to share this because it was so true. I left my partner, my husband at the time, back in 1995, left with the dog and the cat. That was it. I left everything else behind me. And not saying that I'm going to be an advocate of feng shui. I don't know too much about it, although I know that it does work. But having been in that situation where I felt like I'd got nothing left out of that relationship, what actually happened was my life started to turn a corner. And because there was no baggage with me, no wounded soldier, you know, that I was carrying with me anymore, new things started to come in. So when you change your story and you start to look at what it is that you really want, then I do believe that that starts to come towards you.
And what kind of evidence can you give for that? Because when you're right stuck in the middle of it, and often when I say to people, like you said yourself at the time, you know, what do I want? It's almost like it's an incredible thought and almost impossible to imagine. I certainly could never have imagined what I'm doing now to when I was on my own with 3 small children and thinking I'll never ever be happy again. It would have been inconceivable. So is it important that, how do you balance having the vision and also the stepping stones that you need to take? Because you cannot embrace the full vision straight away. It's almost impossible.
100%, absolutely correct. And the thing is, what we find is that most people know what they don't want. And so some coaches will say, oh, well, you know, that's no good because you really need to know what you want. Great starting point. If you know, I don't want to be miserable anymore, guess what? You want to be happy. Great. So how can I do that? So then it's about, well, what do I do that makes me happy right now? There will be some gratitude in every day, whether or not it is, I'm grateful that I am alive to be able to look after my children. I'm grateful that the birds are singing. I'm grateful that, you know, just could be really small things to begin with. So, okay, if that makes me sort of smile for 3 seconds, it's a beginning. Single step of a big journey. I can hear that sound as well.
Yes, it's a strange sound. I don't know what's going on in the background there.
I'm grateful that I can hear, even if it is that sound. So, what is it that you don't want? If you haven't got that that positivity because you're feeling, you know, jaded, it is like a death. You know, you're going to go through that process like you do when you lose a person, you know, that dies and leaves the earth. You're going to lose that person out of your life potentially. So, what is it that you want? I don't want this, so I know I want the opposite of that. That's a really great place to start. And then just start to be really grateful for small things to begin with, so that you don't forget how to be grateful, how to put positive intentions out into the world. And what happened to me, and the evidence, if you like, was that I got a job out of the blue that I never planned for. In fact, my mother used to work for a recruitment agent as their secretary, and she said, could you just go for this job while you're doing nothing? Because I'd left everything, my job and everything. And I went for the job, and they were so pleased with me that I ploughed through the snow to get to them, that I got the job. I wasn't even qualified, but I got the job. And because I got the job, I had a little bit of time before I went to work. I went to see my relatives in Blackpool. I met my next partner. That was 25 years ago. If I hadn't have just, it's almost like you have to say, I don't know why this is happening to me right now. It really feels like pants, you know, like I'm not in a good place at all. And at the same time, there has to be a reason for this. And you just have to have that belief that there is a reason for you going through what appears to be at the time really bad. Because I wouldn't live in the fantastic place that I live. I wouldn't have been a speaker. You know, I wouldn't have been able to help and encourage like millions of people across the planet if I'd still been in that relationship. And at the time, you don't know where it's going. And at the same time, you just have to trust. Trust is, and have hope. That's my big words, trust and hope.
I think that's what you put your finger on it there. It's about trust, but how it's learning to trust yourself when certainly I was in a situation where I didn't trust anyone, and I certainly didn't trust myself, because I couldn't believe I'd let myself get into this situation. So it is about rebuilding trust. How does the Find Your Why and the work you do with that help people get into that sort of self-belief, self-trust place?
Well, we help people to find out who they really are. Because, you come into this world expecting, I was trained by the amazing Miss Appear, and she always says, you come into the world expecting to be loved. You've just been in the in the silver service department. Someone's fed you, watered you, and even taken away your poo. Do you know what I mean? So, like, you come in expecting everything to be handed to you on a plate, right? And then life starts to happen. So we help people to go back and to reintroduce themselves to themselves, because everybody is amazingly, uniquely freaking awesome.
Brilliant. And after, when this is streaming live now, but if you pop the link on it on the divorce, or send me the link, I'll make sure I put the link onto the comments of this. By the way, it's streaming onto YouTube, onto Facebook page, our Facebook group Best Way to Divorce, and also onto Twitter. So if anyone's watching this now, please like and share it so more people can get access to it. Thank you so much, Cheryl. It's lovely to see you and have you on the show. I'm very, very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you to everybody. Bye-bye.
And what we're going to do now is move to the sort of education side, if you like. And I've got so I do like that tune. We are doing a bit of the divorce masterclass before we have our shared story. And this is actually so much to say on this, I'm breaking it into two, so you'll get the rest of it next week. And this is part of the divorce first aid section of the masterclass. If you use the QR code, you can still access the whole beginning section for absolutely nothing, and it's particularly useful if you're in the early stages of divorce. Now, in the divorce first aid, we have sticking plasters. Sticking plasters, it's a bit like stemming the flow of money. That's what this is a metaphor. And of course, the hidden cost of divorce and family breakup, it's not just lawyers' fees that you need to think about. Also, we're going to be talking about, that we may get more onto this next week, does divorce mediation really mean smaller maintenance payments? Because a lot of people assume they'll get less if they use dispute resolution, and actually that's not quite true. So sticking plasters will not heal a wound, but they are very useful as an immediate way to provide protection. So in the early stages, you need to cope. Coping is what most people do, but you'll probably not have a plaster big enough to stem the flow of money leaving your bank account as the reality of the financial costs of divorce begin to hit home. So I'm going to give you a few scary stories here. Telling someone, obviously, when they're sort of hemorrhaging money, that it's all going to be fine, even though they think they're going to, they feel like they're going to have financial ruin, and can be very, very afraid about it. You can try to appease that as much as you can, but it's not going to calm them down. So what they really need is just good practical advice. And obviously the easiest way to save money is to keep your divorce as much as possible out of court. What can happen when that doesn't go to plan? If you end up and there's a way you can actually tell, they say this can happen. So if you argue with your spouse about finances once a week, they say that your marriage is 30% more likely to end in divorce than if you argue with your spouse about finances less frequently. So let's hope that you're not arguing once a week and it's less than that. But if you are, it's definitely going to put an awful lot of pressure on your marriage. It's certainly going to make things harder in the divorce as well. So the same study found that couples that had no assets at the beginning of a 3-year period were 70% more likely to divorce by the end of that period than couples with $10,000 in assets. So there definitely does seem to be a link that with money troubles and the pressures on the relationship. If you have twins or triplets, apparently your marriage is 17% more likely to end in divorce than if your children are not multiple births. Partly they reckon it's because of the strain that puts on the finances. So money can be a factor in potentially causing divorce, but it's not surprising also that it's a huge issue during the divorce as well. And there's lots of costs that people just don't think about. I'm going to take a US example here, but it's the same for the UK. With an average income for a US couple, let's say $60,000 a year, at least one child, and a home worth $185,000, the average cost of a divorce using US Census statistics would be about $53,000. And that price tag tends to include short-term marriage therapy for themselves, about 20 weeks of therapy for their child. It would also include the cost of the hire of the attorney, the cost of selling the marital home, purchasing another at a lower value, and potentially also renting an apartment in the same area for the other. So there's all these other different costs that come into the account, and you really need to really think these through, because a lot of people don't right at the beginning. Now, in the UK, you might think that, surely perhaps it's less complex, maybe cheaper, but you'd be wrong, especially if that divorce becomes adversarial. So Novitas launched a fund back in 2012 in the UK to help cover the rising costs of divorces and provide an annual return of 8% for investors. Novitas calculated that the average cost in London just to pay the solicitors was £40,000 for each set of solicitors' fees. So that's £80,000 for the couple in legal fees alone. Now, the true cost of rushing into an adversarial for divorce is still one of, I often think, the best kept secrets in town. So the financial cost of divorce is a bit like measuring a ball of a string that never stops unravelling. So apart from the initial costs of separate homes, cars, holidays, you've also got the post-divorce costs of going back to court to argue over the variance of maintenance, child access disputes, arrears, refusal to pay maintenance or child support. Quite often people don't just go to court once, it can be an ongoing saga. If you add into that the emotional costs, which can affect your work life, the process can impact on your income, especially if depression kicks in. So you may even end up paying for private detectives, barristers and DNA tests to prove paternity if things get really nasty. And as you all know, we definitely want to make sure that you don't go down that route. So to round off, the planning for the future is rarely what we do in practice. Nancy Michael, she was 40, a mother of 3 and a successful businesswoman when her husband of 16 years told her he wanted a divorce. Beyond the emotional cost that followed his announcement, Nancy eventually found herself shocked by the price tag as well. In her case, it was more than $100,000 in legal, medical and moving costs. She said something really interesting. She said, "I hadn't planned for his departure." She said, I wish I'd set money aside. That would have been the smart thing to do." So if you're in that situation where you're getting that chance again to go into a new relationship, just as Cheryl was talking about earlier, don't think it's unromantic to have a prenup. You know, you plan for your death with a will. Why would you not plan for potentially the end of a marriage? It's not a depressing thing to do. It's just sensible to think about what would that cost and have some provision in there, because it happens, as we all know. And one of my favourite quotes to finish off this with is Zsa Gabor. She very famously said, "I'm a marvellous housekeeper. Every time I leave a man, I keep his house." And we're now going to have my favourite part of the whole show, which is shared stories. And I'm very, very grateful to the lovely Una, who's coming in now to speak with us. Una is, because quite often if you're watching this, you're very welcome to share your story. You can do it anonymously, but Una's brave enough to come here in person. And what's extra interesting, we're going to talk about co-parenting, is that Una is actually a child expert. She's a child psychologist as well. But today, we will get her back as a full-on expert in a later show, but just for the next 5 minutes, I wanted to hear some of her stories about how she's found co-parenting. She had 2 young children, and you did nesting for a while, didn't you?
I wouldn't call it nesting because I was staying in my flat. It's just that the father of our children, he was coming around to start with every other night to put them to sleep, and it worked at the beginning so during the transition phase, and also because our children, our youngest she was just so little.
And I think that's very true what you've said there. It worked for a while, and people think they want a definite certain answer. This is how we do it, but it's not that simple, is it? What kind of transitions have you gone through with the way that you've managed the co-parenting?
Oh, many. It's been almost 8 years since our separation, and one of the things that I've learned that it's a journey. The relationship continues, and it does, it goes through these seasons. It requires maintenance. So it doesn't. The learning doesn't stop. Looking after the relationship doesn't stop, just in a different way.
What have been the most challenging times for you as a co-parent? And perhaps you can also reflect on, were you able to draw from your knowledge as an expert in working with children in child psychology, or was it just completely uncharted territory for you?
I really was, as we were beginning this journey, I was thinking, with all my education and experience, I should be the person who really be in a good position to hold and support our children through this transition in our family. But in my experience, nothing can prepare you for that. It definitely was a steep learning curve, and I sought support, and I was very grateful for the support that I did have.
And I think it's actually comforting to know for people that when this happens to you, it's nobody knows what it's like, but like having a baby, no one knows what it's like unless they've been there and done it. And that, as you said, getting support is really helpful. What kind of support did you find the most useful and practical? I know it'll be different for everybody, but what helped you the most?
Let me think. As I was preparing to talk to you, I thought just of a few instances that were sort of quite crucial turning points, and it can be something like a phrase or a related experience that you hear, and all of a sudden things fall back into place. And one situation I remember when we were going through our ups and downs, and it was one of the downs, and I was just so stressed, and I was thinking about all the situations. What if this happens? What if that happens? Feeling totally out of control. And I was talking to my mom, out of all people, and she said, "You know what? It doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter how this." Well, I don't remember exactly what she said, but she said, "The main thing is how you show up. The main thing is when you walk from that situation, you know that you showed up in a way that you can be proud of." And of course, it resonates with all my training and the rest of it. But then to hear that from my mom, it was really like, yes, of course. And I think bringing that focus back to me, to how I'm showing up, it was so helpful, because it's so easy to get caught thinking about other people, what they're doing, what they're not doing, and the circumstances, how they're not in my favor. And just knowing that helped me to cut through so much noise and to just simplify what I'm thinking, how I'm acting, and making my life simpler and more fulfilling.
So this is very much that work on yourself, your own healing, your own mental state that has the most power to help you deal with pretty much any co-parenting situation, because it's always going to be tricky. There's always going to be ups and downs, as you say. Have you got any other, perhaps one other little story of moments with sort of aha moments for you that you could share?
Yes, I'd love to. So a few years after our separation, I went to a speeding course. And, you know, I was quite cocky, I think, as I was going there. And I was saying, you know, this is just how I drive. What can they teach me? And those 4 hours at the course completely changed how I think and how I feel about driving. And I think for me, the key turning point was that I became so much more aware of the power and the impact I have when I'm in the driving seat. And I was thinking about all those times when I just got into the car, turned my music on, got to where I needed to be, without even noticing or realizing how it happened and what impact I had on the way. And then when I realized that, I really saw the similarity with parenting, because I think it's so easy to forget that as parents, our presence or absence is so powerful. And, you know, the simple things, you know, how we are, how we stop and listen, how we breathe, have such a massive impact on our children. And since then, for me, it was the turning point to really bring my focus on to mastering being that secure base for our children, so that through how I am, they have this trust that I'm there for them, I'm comfortable with their mess, they can bring it to me, I've got their back. And of course, this is my Northern Star. I'm working on it and failing and, you know, dusting myself off and carrying on. But again, just that focus.
And I know you teach that, don't you? You run workshops. Have you got any coming up soon?
I'm coming up next week, actually, next Wednesday at 8 o'clock, the essentials of being a secure base for your child.
So you do me a favour and pop on the live stream in the comments, put the link into that so people can access it. That would be wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that, and we'll get you back with a bit more time and a later show, and to talk more about giving your experience, not only your personal experience but your professional experience, how to deal particularly with challenging co-parenting relationships, because there seems to be quite a few of those. Thank you so much, Una. It's lovely.
Take care.
Lovely to see you here.
Thanks.
And now I want you to get your phones ready, everybody. I can hear a little bit of background there. I don't know if any of my Skype team have got their microphones on, because everyone needs to be off for the moment, because we're just going to have a quick look through the wonderful QR codes, and these are magical because they will take you to wonderful places. And the first one, if you stick it up here, you can access the Divorce Financial Workshop. We've got one booked in. It's happening June the 18th, so it's not that far away. It's on a Thursday evening between 7 and 8:30. How we're going to squeeze it into an hour and a half, I don't know. And we've got a financial planner, we've got healing, we've got a mediator and a collaborative lawyer, we've got an expert in very, very difficult relationships. So we've got a fantastic lineup of experts, and it's a proper workshop, so you can really join in and ask questions if you want to, no pressure. And there's limited numbers because we don't want too many people. So if you use that QR code, you'll be able to go through and access that and register for that. So please do that if you're at any stage of divorce. It's a really good workshop to enjoy. And of course it will be on Zoom, which works wonderfully for these workshops. This is the QR code again for the masterclass. As I said, you can get a whole section of it at no cost, so make the most of that. I won't keep that free forever. And if you don't manage to work your phones quickly enough, don't worry, they'll still work on the replay. If you're not already a member of the the Best Way to Divorce Facebook group, we've got over 650 in there, UK, US and South Africa, and we've got quite a lot of different nationalities, but it's a very supportive space. It's on the whole very healthy. You can be honest if you're not happy with your ex, but it's not a whinge fest there. We're very full of people who will give you positive and helpful guidance. Debbie's coming up any minute now, and there you've got a QR code. It will also be on the the slide when you be able to see Debbie, so you can access some free videos using that QR code, and that they will give you, there'll be preparation videos, and also for a short time you'll get a free whole set of video, the theta videos that Debbie has. So I really do encourage you to make the most of that. And now I'm going to bring in Debbie to the call. So we'll just have a little intro and Debbie will take the floor. I know that she's going to talk a little bit about the when you get divorced, there's more than just the practical side and the finances. There's a psychological, there's deeper stuff going on, and Debbie's going to tell us a little bit about that and then give us a bit of a healing.
Okay. So, hello, Susie.
Hello. I gave you a little intro there with a nice little slide. Hello, and welcome. Thank you so much for coming back, Debbie, and to do this healing with us. So I'm going to give you the floor. Perhaps if you could just start, for those who don't already know you, tell them a little bit about the work you do.
All right. So I wear a number of hats, but the one that I think is so effective, and especially in these circumstances, is theta healing. And theta healing takes into account your spiritual, your emotional, your mental, and your physical reactions. And it's so easy and so fast. So you find that you can evaporate some of your trauma, because it is very traumatic going through a divorce. And one of the things I really like to do when I'm faced with a divorcing person is to cancel their vows, because a divorce doesn't do it. Just because you have a piece of paper that says you're divorced doesn't cancel the vows you have made to the other person. So I like to do that. Send those vows back to the light with thanks, but it's time for a new start if you are divorcing. And many people haven't realized what bonds they have with the other person that will persist after a divorce. And the other thing is that it's really necessary to cleanse yourself of all the anger and the hurt that you've accumulated in getting divorced, because there is no point in carrying that with you into the next relationship.
Thank you.
So,
and Debbie, could I just ask you if you can sit back a little bit, only because I've got lovely Debbie Telli Theta Healer. Of course, you can't see it, and I don't want it to cover your lovely face. That's perfect. That's perfect.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I will now start with a healing. And if everyone would please close their eyes. And I'm going to put each one of us under a shower of universal love, so that you can be washed down, cleaned down, inside and out. And feel that shower on you. And now we're going to imagine a white light sword that is going to come through the top of your head, your top chakra. And this white light is going to regenerate all your chakras as it goes down through you. So let's start with the very top chakra. And this is your spiritual chakra, purple, Om. And let this light regenerate it. Make sure that the color is true, that it's spinning correctly around this white light. And then when you feel that it's been regenerated enough, let the light just move down to the next chakra, which is your third eye, and which is a dark blue. And let that regenerate. Needs to be spinning nicely, not all over the place. Good color, a true color. And let the white light make it into a true color. And then the light goes further down into your throat. And this chakra is for peace. And it is a light blue. And see that spinning. And feel the peace that it generates. Going further down, the light is going to enter your heart. And this chakra is green. and further down to your solar plexus, which is your power, your connection with others. And this is gold. And let it go further into your abdomen. And the next chakra is orange, and that is for relationships. Let it spin. And now further down to your base chakra, which is red. And make sure that red is a nice true red. No dingy spots, no dark places in it. And see that it spins correctly. And now the light is going to go through you and out and start pooling around your feet. And it's going to become a large puddle. And as it comes through you even more, it's going to develop into a lake. And even more, it's going to go as far as the eye can see. And whatever is in that pathway is going to be converted to the light. So all the dark little bits and pieces can be converted to the light. And now we're going to take our bazookas out, our mental bazookas out, and aim them at the dark cloud hovering above your head. And see that black cloud shatter and splinter and leave you. And what is there in its stead? And we'll take the bazooka again and aim it at the black cloud behind the small of your back and see that evaporate. And now we are going to peel ourselves like a grape of the things that encompass us and are at tight bonds around us. So we will start off with betrayal. Let us peel ourselves of betrayal. And again, peel yourself of anger. And peel yourself of despair. And how about fear? Fear of the future. Fear what's going to happen now. And how about hatred? Peel yourself off. And I'm sure you can all think of one or two that you might be carrying. Would you do that for yourselves now? Okay. Right, we are now going to reconnect ourselves with the Creator. So taking the energy from your heart up through the top of your head and send it out to the Creator. And the Creator is going to send back to you the Creator's energy through the top of your head, down through all the chakras to the base, and then back up to the heart. Breathe it in. And we're going to do the same to our souls, taking the energy from the heart up through the top of the head and off to the soul. And then from the soul, back to you, down through from the top of your head to the base chakra and back up to the heart. Breathe it in. And now repeat 3 times. I reclaim my power. I reclaim my power. I reclaim my power. And we're going to put as the last thing the shamanic circles of protections around us. So 7 circles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Breathe them all in, and when you're ready, open your eyes. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. I feel really woozy now. The first time you did that, I think I'd turned my microphone off and I forgot to put it back on again and talked mute for the rest of the programme. So I'm getting better. Thank you, that was lovely. Just before you go, for people who are interested to find out more about that this idea of the breaking of the bonds, I know you've got an article and some videos on that. I'll pop those into the comments of the live stream of this afterwards, so you can find out a little bit more about that. And we'll be having you on the show soon, actually, as an expert as well. So we need more weeks to get all these amazing people in. So thank you so much. My pleasure. So we're going to come to the end of the show now. My last words are, as always, in the war of divorce, on the battlefield of family separation, always make peace your weapon of choice.